Yo, what's going on, everybody? Fizz here once again. So first things first, before we hop into the video, video's coming. There's another rip clip coming. Also, I'm going to be running 2 build diaries in tandem, so there should be something for most people. I was going to say everybody, but most people to be pleased by at least one of these 2 build diaries coming out. We're redoing the Bone Shatter character with some changes. I'm going to be making some changes to the build, I'm going to be playing it differently. It's not changes that I personally have made for the most part. They're just like a different person's build. Not that there was anything wrong with the old one. It's just, you know, like re-rolling the same build. I want to try to do something a little bit different than what I did last time, just, you know, to keep it fresh. So there will be another Bone Shatter Slayer happening. I also dropped a Writhing Jar, so there's that. And then this one is a Vampire build diary. So this character is Physics Vampire. Very straightforward, right? So it's based around Exsanguinate, as you could probably tell by the thumbnail or the title of the video by this point. So I haven't played the character a whole lot. We're level 85. There's not a whole lot going on here yet, but I'll go ahead, jump into a map. It's a T10 rolled with whatever. I think it was AoE and like haste, basically. So we'll run through here, and then afterwards I'll explain the mechanics. So a little bit about this build. I have like always really enjoyed this build when it first came out. Like I really like the whole thematic behind like blood magic and stuff like that. I think it's really cool. I think it's actually pretty underutilized too, I would say. In video games in general, not necessarily ARPGs, but just video games in general don't really explore that archetype, I guess, too much. So whenever that, you know, an opportunity comes up for something that I feel is like pretty underutilized in games, I really like to try to do something with it. So it was one of my favorite builds in Ultimatum. And in Ultimatum, I played a version basically very similar to Darky, now Ben's original POV that he had for the character, with like Petrified Blood and a bunch of other stuff, because Petrified Blood was new in that patch. And I enjoyed it a lot. And then I got to like level 97 or 98, and I was running like that 80% delirious primordial blocks, and then I got one-shotted by a Croesus. So, you know, Petrified Blood was ultimately my downfall, but it was unique and it was really fun to play. So now doing it again, this is a build that I've almost done again a million times. Like I've almost bit the bullet and played it again so many times. I've even like leveled it to maps a few times, and then I just go and do something else instead. Just because, like, you know, it's a Fizz dot. We're playing hardcore. We're also playing SSF. Both of those things can make it hard to scale damage, you know, as easily as you can in other game modes, right? So ever since Expedition, there's a map boss. Ever since Expedition, when our damage was nerfed, I was always a little bit too scared to really bite the bullet and do the build. But I put it in my build diary list for this league, as I have for the past few leagues, I think. And this time I sat down and I just POV'd it for a while, and then it actually came up with some really nice numbers. So that was a T10 map. There's some real basic gear here. So first I'm going to get into the passive tree. And there were a lot of changes, and this may have more iterations after this. It may change further than what you see now, because it has changed a bit from the base version that I theory crafted out. First and foremost, I'm going to go over the ascendancies, because I think that's really important, being a Scion, right? So I think an obvious take here that you would expect is Gladiator, simply because 20% more Fizz dot over time. That's really good. That's a 20% more damage multiplier for our build. Very strong. So we take that, and that's basically all we're really getting from this Ascendancy, because we don't go Necro. We don't go Block, which is, I would say, the typical way you would play this, and it's what I played with last time I played the build. However, with the new Raider Ascendancy, because Raider has since been slightly reworked, I feel like Raider is actually probably a better choice here. At least in SSF, right? So there's a few things we get here. We get 20% flat spell suppress, which I think is really strong. We get some move speed, which is cool. We have onslaught when on full frenzy. We have permaphasing, and we have a 10% chance to gain a frenzy charge when we hit a rare unique enemy. So what that basically means is, while bossing, we have perma onslaught, and we have perma frenzy charges. Now, if you're not familiar with how frenzy charges actually work, One frenzy charge will give you 4% increased attack and cast speed, and it will also give you 4% more damage multiplier. That is not an increased damage, it is a more multiplier. So very good. So between the two ascendancies we picked, we get 32% more damage. Frenzy charges just for the cast speed, right? So onslaught's 20% baseline, assuming no additional onslaught effect, which is 20% move speed, attack speed, and cast speed. So that's 20% with 3 frenzy charges baseline is 32% cast speed, which is a lot more than you can actually get from taking the Necro Ascendancy. So what we give up, basically, what we give up by dropping Necro is we drop the ability to scale generic damage through minion damage nodes due to spiritual aid, and we lose block. What do we gain? Well, we get more damage, we get more cast speed, and we gain Ghost Shrouds, and we gain, by extension, we gain Grace, and we also get easy spell suppress cap. Those are the 3 things we get. And I think a big part of Exsanguinate is not how good it looks on paper, because there's a lot of things with Exsanguinate that come down to feel and like the reality of playing the game, right? So what I mean when I say that is like, I have enough, basically right now I have enough cast speed to sustain like 3.5 stacks of Exsanguinate. You can't go over 3 stacks, but it's important to note because basically when you're bossing, you will take out Chain and you'll put in Swift Affliction. So you have like a 1-second duration on your dot. So Exsanguinate is and is not a dot at the same time, right? Like 1 second dot effect is not really a dot effect because as soon as you start moving, you lose your dot, right? That's basically how it works. The only time you have damage is when you're free casting. So what that means is the more cast speed we can get, the better. Even if we can technically sustain 3 stacks of Exsanguinate when we're free casting, the more you can get, the more fluid it is going to feel in an actual like boss environment, and even while mapping. More is always better in this sense. So that on top of like, I think Ghost Stance is really, really strong and I wanted to fit into the build. If I have to choose between basically running Tempest Shield, which this is a damage loss, but basically having block or having spell suppression cap very reliably, and having Grace and having Ghost Shrouds, I'm going to lean towards Ghost Shrouds and giving up the block, especially since this this iteration should give us more damage by a significant margin over running the Necromancer version. With the preamble of the Ascendancies out of the way, also, I guess one last thing I should mention, I took Path of the Ranger. We want our 3 free passives here. Originally, I did plan to path out from the Ranger start. However, due to one unforeseen thing, I could not sustain Frenzy Charges easily. So if you don't have a Frenzy Charge on Kill Ring or something like that, you do want to take Overcharge. Now, even if you were to get Frenzy Charge on Kill, I think it's worth pathing Overcharge for the Charge Mastery alone. And I will go, I guess I'll go in depth now on why. Basically, the Charge Mastery is going to do 2 really big things for the build. The first thing it'll do is it gives you bad luck prevention, in the sense of it'll prevent your Frenzy Charges from falling off if you go a while without getting any. Having 20 seconds baseline on your Frenzy Charges, and we get so many jewel sockets in this build that if you roll with Harvest Frenzy Charge duration, you could have up to like 30 seconds on your Frenzy Charges, which is crazy. So you would be able to have very, very long Frenzy Charge. Which feels like when you're actually mapping and running around and picking up loot and, dealing with expedition altars and, like all sorts of stuff like that. Again, this is one of those things that may not make sense on paper, but when you're actually playing the game, it makes a very noticeable difference in how smooth the build is to play. Because remember, when we don't have max Frenzy Charges, not only are we missing the cast speed and the damage from the Frenzy Charges themselves, but we're also missing our Onslaught because we only have Onslaught when we're at max. So it's a big deal for that. There's another reason why, though, because taking this Charge Mastery for 100% increased duration makes all charges last 20 seconds. What that means, I don't have anything now, what that means is you can get the Endurance Charge gained every 15 seconds, baseline Exarch implicit, I think it's Exarch. And what that will do is you don't have to like scale charge duration in any other way, and you will have maximum endurance charges and maximum endurance charge uptime 100% while bossing, which is a ton of damage reduction as well. So that's very good, both offensively and defensively, getting this mastery, I think. So it's worth it. Anyway, so when you factor in the kind of like the fact that you kind of need to take overcharge, it's like, well, I can take 4 points here, or I can spend 6 points here. But realistically, these 4 points are completely dead nodes, whereas these 6 points, we only have technically 1 dead node. Harrier gives us cast speed, which we want as much as we can get. Move speed, which is nice. Attack speed helps with shield charge. Then all of these minor nodes give 8% spell damage each, with a 10% on the final one with int, which does make a small difference, albeit a useful one, because int is our lowest stat by far, and there's a lot of int based stuff in the build. So the more int you can get, the better, because it does pad it a little bit in terms of like gym stat requirements and stuff like that. So basically we're spending 2 extra passive points, but we're getting a lot more than what we would if we just path this way. So really we don't get a whole lot from being able to start in a different part of the tree. We're just using it for passive points. So finally, with that massive preamble out of the way, how are we pathing? Well, Scion Fizz Dot feels amazingly smooth the level because you start in the perfect place. Now, a lot of people hate leveling as Scion, but I think this is one really big exception to the rule that Scion leveling is always painful, simply because you get Fizz damage straight out of the gate. Fizz damage. And because you're a Scion, even if you're playing SSF and you don't want to mule or do whatever, you get splitting steel straight from the start of the game. So this is just percent Fizz damage. It's generic Fizz damage, which means you go splitting steel until level 12, and then you can go directly into Exsanguinate and level directly with Exsanguinate, and it'll feel completely fine. So we have a bunch of Fizz damage here at the start. We get over to Path of the Warrior. We get a bunch of flat armor, which at level 4, 50 flat armor is a lot. 20 strength, which is basically some life, and more generic Fizz damage. Then we path on over here. We get a ton of life. Constitution. If you want, you could take a life mastery here straight off the bat. You could grab 50 flat life in the beginning of A1, which is a ton. Basically, I took Iron Will right at the start because you're just, there's tons of strength nodes here. Like, Iron Will is a ton of damage for the build. I have over 400 strength, and we're not done. We're level 85, right? So Iron Will is going to give you a big bang for your buck in terms of damage that you're going to be gaining while leveling. And then immediately rush Veteran Soldier. It's all right here. Like, you can have all of this by the end of Act 1 by the time you swap to Exsanguinate. 12% increased Fizz damage, 5 Fizz dot multi, 15 Fizz dot multi, and flat life. Veteran Soldier is an amazing node. And then I grabbed the ones over here too because I think it's worth it. Now, are you going to be stunning stuff? No, not really. But this is 39% increased Fizz damage for 2 nodes, which is worth. On top of the Fizz Mastery giving 40% increased Fizz damage with skills that cost life. This is such an efficient cluster, especially on the Scion, because you start right here for Fizz dot. It makes there's so much damage and survivability front loaded into these nodes right at the start that leveling is very smooth on this build. So after that, we path on over. Combat stamina I think is very good. So there is some wiggle room here. If I feel like I don't have enough regen, so I'm not done pathing yet. I'm gonna get growth and decay next. So after I have growth and decay, if I feel like I don't have enough regen, if it's a little bit uncomfortable, I'll probably take the hit to the armor loss and take those points and just put them in hardy, because this is a lot more regen, and see how it feels then, and kind of go from there. Anyway, that out of the way, combat stamina is really nice while leveling. A ton of regen, ton of armor. You get some life as well as getting the armor mastery very early on. Lets you run determination super early if you want to. I actually didn't run determination until like Act 7 or Act 8. I leveled a Spellslinger and just full loaded all of my mana with Spellslinger setups. You don't have to do it that way. Felt fine to me, especially because Scion, the way you're pathing this tree, you get so much life. It is insane. I think in Act 4 I had almost 2k life. It was ridiculous. I was leveling with Twink Gear, so there's that. Afterwards, I actually pathed straight down from there because I needed the int, so I figured I might as well grab the int there and then go down. So Born to Fight's actually pretty good. Again, more strength, which equates to more damage and life. Attack speeds, whatever. It makes a small difference for shield charge, but it's not a big deal. 26% increased Fizz damage is really nice. Then you go straight in these nodes here. Again, strength, life, and damage, which is really good for us. Life. And then Warrior's Blood, strength, life, and damage, as well as getting a fat life regen node. Then over here for Vanquisher. Vanquisher's really nice. I grabbed the Fizz Mastery for Warbanner mana reservation. It doesn't save that much mana, but it is noticeable. Basically, it's just a bunch of Fizz dot multi and generic percent damage. Crush. So Crush will help for the Exsanguinate on hit because it lowers just physical damage reduction. It's not like spell-based or whatever. So as soon as we hit them with Exsanguinate, it will make them take more damage from the hit portion of Exsanguinate. Why is that important? Well, you're going to be using Cruelty, so it makes it, you know, marginally easier to have higher Cruelty effect while leveling. And even while mapping, I guess, to a degree. Moving down from there, it's just, you know, your typical life, whatever nodes. This is life and res with +1 max fire. This is life and armor. If you didn't grab determination up here with combat stamina, you need to grab it now. Basically, yeah, that's really it. And then another life mastery. Here's where you're going to grab whatever you didn't grab earlier. Reduce costs of skills if you feel like you're chunking yourself too hard, or, you know, the 10% max life. Then we get to Cannibalistic Rite, and Cannibalistic Rite is very good for this build. I feel like it's a must take, which is why we pathed over here instead of going somewhere else. So basically, what is it? Well, 12, 12, 30. So this is 24%. This is 54% increased damage across 3 nodes. Recover 2% life on kill if you spent life recently, which we will have. And then across all of these, this is 18% reduced life cost of skills. And then when you pair it with the mastery, that's what, 33% reduced life cost of skills. Helps a lot, makes stuff a lot cheaper. You can see that on a 6 link. Everything costs 172 life. If you're curious about how the regen is, it looks like that, right? So when I'm spamming it, obviously I would have a lot more cast speed with all my buffs up, but you can basically sustain. So moving on from there, actually at this point, I did not go up here. As soon as I got the stuff down here, I started pathing out of this side of the tree. Because at this point I had grabbed Raider, because I rushed Raider. So at Cruel Lab is when I wanted to path out here and grab Overcharge so I could have my Frenzy charges and my Onslaught, right? So pathed out through here, grab the spell damage, everything else, grab Overcharge, and then that's when I went for Charisma. And once I got Charisma and the Mana Reservation node, that's when I finally picked up Determination, and when I dropped my Spell Slinging setup, because I had the Charge Masteries, which meant I had full Frenzy charges, and Onslaught, which meant the like kind of basically the very slow base cast time of Exsanguinate was sped up enough to where I didn't feel like I needed to sling. However, if you care about being as efficient as possible, you probably just want to sling until you get to maps and then swap, but I didn't want to do that. This is also technically safer because you'll get more damage from this and you'll be able to run more defense, so there's that. So, running Charisma is just a, you know, generic mana node, Mana Reservation node. We grab the Mana Reservation efficiency. You can path on over here, but I didn't grab Revenge of the Hunted for quite a bit until I started running Grace. So you don't need to worry about this while leveling. From there, I pathed up, went to Blood Siphon. Again, a bunch of cast speed, which is nice. Dex Int, life on kill, max life, strength, which again, life and damage. Pathed through Entropy, which is really good. Skill effect duration is really nice. If there was just a little bit closer skill effect duration node, I would probably go for it because it would make the build a little bit cushier to play. However, I don't really want to spare the points. Pathing through the bottom to link the tree up this way costs too many points. And then pathing up here, I feel like is a little bit too far out of the way because that's 3, 6, 7, 3, 4, 5, 6 points that you kind of have to give up. So I mean, like, this is kind of just quality of life, realistically. Kind of quality of life, and you would have to give up basically damage or survivability to get it, and I didn't really feel worth it to me. That may change, but as of right now, that's my opinion. So Entropy, going over Fangs of the Viper. I know some people skip these nodes to save like a passive point or two. I just wanted the damage, and I like Fangs of the Viper. The move speed is nice, the dex is nice, we get 20% increased fizz, why not? I will be taking Resourcefulness, I just haven't taken it yet because I'm currently only at 83% spell suppression chance. Once I get one more spell suppression roll, this will become the difference between being spell sup capped and not. So as soon as I get one more piece of gear with spell sup on it, I'll take this. Moving on from there, Blood Drinker, more life on kill. Basically, whenever you're running through maps, you could get chunked to half, and as long as you kill a few things, your life will be full again. You have so much life on kill in the build, it's funny. It's not necessary, and it's a little bit niche, but it's like Trickster-esque, right? It's nice quality of life. Moving up from there, Ghost Dance. As soon as you pick up Ghost Dance, as soon as you click that, you need to have the Evasion Mastery with Grace so you can start running everything. But you can't do that until you have the second Mana Reservation efficiency node. Now, you don't actually need to take the full wheel in the Mastery. You just need the second point here for the Reservation efficiency, and that's all that really matters. And lastly, written in blood is life and ES. Like I said, currently where I'm going to be pathing is down here. I'm going to pick up left shade. I'm also going to go through growth and decay. I'm going to be pathing through the life regeneration node for obvious reasons. And then the damage over time mastery. So there's a lot of nice stuff here. The 10% less damage taken from damage over time is nice, given the, you know, the crux of the build is spending your life to damage things. Increased effective cruelty. I'm probably going to end up taking that. However, if I end up swapping cruelty out for something else, then I will end up taking the skill effect duration node instead. Yeah, a lot of this is going to come down to, like, once I'm actually at endgame and I do some bosses, how it feels. If I feel like I really need that 15% skill effect duration and I'm okay sacrificing a little bit of more multi for it, then I'll do that. But at the start, I'll probably just take the increased effective cruelty. And it's also worth noting that the skill effect duration will feel comfier while clearing. So, yeah. After that, that's where the tree's at now. I pathed up here, grab Sanctity. Again, life regen, strength, armor, very nice. Discipline and training, you guys don't need me to tell you what this is, it's life. And then Retribution is a really nice node, it's 15% increased damage, attack and cast speed, and more strength and int. So, that is the tree as is. That's everything in the tree. If you guys have questions, let me know. Now we're going to move on to gear. So this is a cold iron point. This is by no means the endgame weapon. You don't need this to run the build at all. I just happen to have one, so I threw it on. It supplements early game pretty nicely. Now, endgame, especially this being Sentinel League, you can craft some really nasty stuff. Like, endgame wand, I'm looking at like a +1 to all spells, +1 to fizz, which is going to give us a very high level of determination and things like that, which is going to be nice. It'll basically +1 to fizz, it will just scale a lot of things in the build, really. So, like, when you compare a cold iron point to like the type of wand that I'm expecting to craft for myself, like a true endgame wand, like a basic wand with like a 1+1 with some damage, some damage multi on it and some spell damage, it's like a 10% damage increase over cold iron point. But if you're looking at like a full endgame wand where you have a +2, you have some cast speed, some spell damage, some fizz dot multi or dot multi on it or whatever, like a full crafted wand, you're looking at like a 30% damage increase overall for the build. So like cold iron point is not at all necessary. It is just like a very basic weapon that you can just kind of plug and play on for like the early progression of the character. For the helmet, I'm running just generic whatever. So I did use some crappy loathings on this to have a little bit more mana wiggle room. I do think it is necessary to have this, especially early on. So this is only a 5%, so it's the weakest loathing you can get. Preferably you would want to use, not Shrieking, the other one, not Deafening, one down from that, I can't remember, but it's the 7 to 8%. Let me double check and make sure I'm not misleading you guys. Yeah, so you want to use Shriekings. I was wrong. You want to use Shriekings preferably, but as you can see, Screamings are okay too. I hit this with the Screaming. Funnily enough, I only had like one Screaming and I threw that on before using my Shriekings because like YOLO, might as well use it. And I just happened to actually get a good hit and I was like, well, shit, now I have to use it. Basically, it rolled tier 2 life, got the mana reservation at open prefix, some res, and a okay, you know, spell sup roll. So it was good enough. A lot of the gear you're going to see on is like good enough for now, and then probably all these pieces are going to be replaced at some point. On the shield, we have another piece that's basically good enough. It's got chaos res, which I need, strength, which is nice. It's life and damage. A decent life roll, a decent spell sup roll, open prefix to put on more life. So there's a lot of life on this shield. Moving on from there, we have the boots. The boots are okay. It's just a lot of resists, really, and then move speed as you do. I will need to replace these because I do need spell sup. The gloves, again, these are kind of whatever. They're actually really good, but basically the suffixes are finished. Like, you have 2 tier 2 res rolls and a tier 2 spell sup roll in the gloves. Realistically, what you want to do is farm up some Eldritch currency or some suffixes can't be changed and hit this a few times and then get a really good pair of gloves. They are like eye level 80, so you can, you know, basically roll most mods on this that you're going to care about. So this is basically a finished pair of gloves for the suffixes, and then you just re-roll the prefixes a few times until you get something better than what I have. For now, it's acceptable. It's, you know, it's what, 68 life on gloves with double res, a lot of res, that's 90 res, and then, you know, 18 spell stuff. That's good. I'll take that. Why not? In the belt slot, we have just a typical leather belt with strength. All the strength rolls are just, they're convenient. They're not intentional. What is that? A tier 2 life roll. A tier 2 life roll. And outside of that, the flask effect is like cool, I guess, but I don't really care. It's got res on it. That's all I really care about. Onto the rings. Tier 1 life roll. Again, strength. Not planned. It just happened that way. Chaos res and res crafted on. Other ring, int. I actually do need the int roll on that. Crappy life roll, some res. The rings are pretty weak. The amulet's pretty weak too. I've got it anointed with acrimony. So acrimony is the anoint that I plan to keep long term for the build. It's sepia and clear. I always confuse them. I think that's clear. It's clear and 2 blacks. It's 15 dot multi. It's really strong. And other than that, it's got some cast speed, which is really nice. It's got a decent life roll, which is really nice. Some res, which is nice. And an open prefix for 1 Elrion craft, which I do think you're going to need on this build all the way through. I think you will need at least 1 open prefix for Elrion craft, so plan around that accordingly. Finally, this is a really crap 6 link I got from a Chains That Bind Gamba. There's not a whole lot of it's life. It's some flat regen, which is cool. It's some res, which is cool. It's got the open prefix for Gravicius craft, which is cool. But it's like, it's just it's a 6 link, you know. that's really all it is. That's the only thing it's really offering me. I would really like to replace this as soon as I can, but for now that's what I'm stuck with. So now we're gonna move on to the gyms. I'll do the links first. So we have Exsanguinate. Again, these are gym level 19 and 18 is what you're gonna see for the majority of these things. Again, the character is only level 85, which is not very far into mapping it at all. If you're curious, the map tiers I've taken the character to, I've cleared up to T13s pretty comfortably. At a gym level 19 at my current gear level, with a decent amount of damage to still take on the tree, actually. So, you know, like, it's pretty comfy as is. So we have Exsanguinate linked with efficacy, cruelty, chain, brutality, and controlled destruction. So here's one thing that you can do. You can swap out efficacy for unleash while clearing if you want it to be a little bit smoother. So the endgame setup, I made sure that I had enough damage on a single cast of Exsanguinate to clear basically everything outside of like super tanky rares, essence monsters, bosses, stuff like that. But while mapping, I wanted to get it to the point where without Unleash, I could cast once and everything would die for the most part, right? And you could see through that canyon map that I ran, that was already for the most part true. However, I do plan on getting a lot more damage. Obviously, by the time the character is like comfortably farming high reds. However, early on, that may not be the case for you. It's okay to take out efficacy and throw in Unleash, especially if your cast speed's a little bit lower and you're struggling to maintain 3 stacks of Exsanguinate. It's basically going to be more damage to just run Unleash over efficacy if you're having trouble free casting, like if you're having trouble with uptime, or if you're having to like cast 1, 2, 3 every time you see a pack. Just throw in Unleash over efficacy and then swap it out once you feel like you have enough damage and or cast speed to not run it. Cruelty, it is what it is. Chain, brutality, and controlled destruction. So obviously this goes without saying. Chain makes the clear feel a million times better. Definitely run this as a mandatory 4-link. However, when you're bossing, even for like Elder Guardians and stuff like that, you're gonna take out Chain and you're gonna throw in Swift Affliction, which is, I have it somewhere. Swift Affliction, which is just a lot more damage over time, but it does reduce the effect or the duration of your Exsanguinate, so do be aware of that. So moving on from the main links, in the helmet we have Shield Charge with faster attacks, Life Tap, and War Banner. So this Life Tap is a temporary measure until I get my mana sorted. This is not a like a long-term thing. It's just right now, if I don't run Life Tap, the mana can get a little bit tight. You can see that I'm just very slowly losing mana, but you also have to factor in the fact that my Flame Dash costs mana, my Molten Shell costs mana, and my Vulnerability costs mana. So when you're putting them all together and you're going through the map, and then I have a moment like that where I can't pass Vuln when I want it, things like that. So currently I'm just running a Life Tap. I do plan on taking this out. So the gyms that I plan on replacing have kind of changed slowly over time. So I think what I'm going to do, someone in my Discord suggested this, is run Stormbrand linked with Culling Strike, which will give the build Culling Strike, which is hype. But the Storm brand will, while bossing, if I have to move or whatever, it will let me keep my 10 stacks of Corrupting Fever, which I think is huge in terms of uptime, and will overall result in a lot more DPS, effective DPS over the course of an entire fight. So, this is one of the passives, this is one of the Jim's sockets that's going to be going in order to supplement that, right? In the last socket here, we have War Banner. Over here in the shield, this is the other Jim socket we're getting rid of. As soon as I get a Volt on hit ring, we're going to do that. As soon as you get a Volt on hit ring, this build starts clearing smooth as butter. It already is incredibly smooth, as you can see, but once you have Volt on hit and everything's getting hit with Volt, you just one-tap everything without having to worry about it. But until then, yeah, we have to self-cast it basically on essence monsters and map bosses, and outside of that, don't really worry about it. But yeah, these two sockets will be going, the life tap and the Vuln, as soon as I'm able to get a Vuln on hit ring, and as soon as I can manage without the life tap. Basically, maybe a Loathing on the helmet, Shrieking Loathing to get some more mana reservation efficiency, and then a higher roll on the Elrion Craft there. Maybe I do a double Elrion Craft, we'll see. Outside of that, we're running a Molten Shell, cast damage taken setup, typical stuff. So it says my Molten Shell's level 13. It's level 10. We're running a 110 setup. Now, in the boots, we're running a Pride with Divine Blessing setup. Obviously, you need to run this with Life Tap. If you're curious how much it costs, it basically costs nothing to cast this. Because the funny thing is, we get like no mana on this build. So running a Pride, like typically running a Divine Blessing setup chunks you pretty hard. This doesn't chunk us like at all because we just don't have mana. So it's pretty free. And then obviously like Pride is just a ton of extra damage. Always flip your prides, by the way. Aura AoE does matter a lot on Pride. Finally, the last socket here, we have Grace. Obviously, make sure it's not linked to the other stuff. In the gloves is where we have our Corrupting Fever. Also level 19, linked with Swift Affliction, Efficacy, and Brutality. That's your generic core link for Corrupting Fever. And in the dagger, I'm running Flame Dash, Determination, and Malevolence. I would like to fit in Arcane Surge if I can at some point. If that means I'm like running a unset ring and I have like my Malevolence or something in there, then so be it, whatever. But I think Arcane Surge would help a lot. It's the mana regen, which is nice, but it's also the more damage multiplier for spell damage, which I think would help a lot, especially like, because if you think about it, like while bossing, at least for me, 99% of the time I'm using Flame Dash over Shield Charge, especially things like Cirrus. I actually just completely unbind Shield Charge and I change both of these keybinds to Flame Dash because it's really easy to mess up sometimes. And you go to like Shield Charge out of a hit from Cirrus or something, and you Shield Charge into a Storm. Even Steel Mage almost did that, I think in like a Gauntlet recently. Well, not recently, but I've seen him almost die to it. So I typically don't use Shield Charge a whole lot while bossing for the most part. So if you think about it, like if you're running like a level 5 or a level 7 Arcane Surge, that's going to have very, very high uptime during bosses and will actually give you a lot more damage through the course of the fight. So that's all the gems out of the way. In terms of the Flasks that I'm running, my Flasks are like super ghetto right now. I'm out of alterations. I don't have alterations to roll this. I would prefer to have CB removal on this, like as you typically see me having on like every setup. Basically running a Jade Flask, Granite Flask, Quicksilver, and a Sulfur Flask. Why a Sulfur Flask? Simply because we have Onslaught already in the build. We have Phasing already in the build. Technically, you could run a Quartz Flask if you wanted until your spell sup cap to get that extra 10% while it's active. You could also run a Silver Flask to have Onslaught in the beginning of maps before you get your Frenzy charges, but it's kind of like, you know, it's only like 1 or 2 packs before you get it. So yeah, I'm just running a Sulfur. I couldn't think of anything else that I really cared about to run, so that's what I'm using for now. And I wouldn't really worry too much about the affixes on these. Basically, the stuff that you're going to want is Reduce Curse Effect. If you're not Freeze Immune yet, make sure that's your top priority. Freeze removal, Corrupting Blood removal and immunity. And then percent increase effective armor while Flask is active. Percent increase effective evasion while Flask is active. And after that, things like Reduce Effective Shock and Reduce Effective Curse come in. And that's pretty much everything for that. If you guys are curious about how to play the build, basically the map starts, you pop Corrupting Fever, you pop your Divine Blessing Pride, make sure you keep Pride up while you're running through the map, and you just kill everything. You come to the map boss, or you come to a tanky Essence monster, you're going to cast Vuln, and you're going to throw down your War Banner. So War Banner doesn't do a whole lot for you, but it does give you Adrenaline when you throw it down, which is going to give you Uba cast speed. So make sure you do that. It does make a difference. It will let you stack your stuff up super fast. Now, end game, once we're not running the self-cast Vuln or anything anymore, my Q is going to be replaced by Stormbrand, and I'll be throwing that on the monster instead because it will stack. It'll do 3 things. It'll stack my Corrupting Fever very fast. It'll let me keep my Corrupting Fever up, because again, the duration on that is also roughly around a second. So if you have to move, it's basically going to fall off. So it'll stack Corrupting Fever very fast. It'll ensure that we get to have Corrupting Fever up, even if we have to move to deal with mechanics. And lastly, Culling Strike, which is technically a more damage multiplier. So very nice. There's a lot of cool stuff with the build. I'm looking forward to it. The build gets so much life. Like right now, I'm level 85. And I'm almost at 7k, like, total raw life right now. And we're running Ghost Shrouds, we're running Grace, Determ, like, all sorts of stuff. Like, it's actually crazy. And then, obviously, we actually get a ton of armor just from nodes alone. Like, my armor right now is only 12.3k, unbuffed, obviously. Like, if I pop just the Granite, it's 17.1. And then, obviously, when we're running through maps, we have full endurance charges. And once we get the implicit on a chest piece, I wouldn't try to roll it on this chest, even if I had the embers to do it right now. But you'll also have 3 endurance charges up all the time as well, which is also more Fizz DR. So the character is like super tanky, honestly. I was surprised. But you get a ton of armor. And again, we're also losing like an armor roll on the chest piece, which is the most important part because we just have this super crap base. But yeah, you get a ton of life. You get a bunch of armor. You have the Ghost Shrouds, all sorts of stuff. Spell Sup. The only thing you're really giving up, like I said at the beginning of the video, is block that Necro gets. It should have more damage, more clear speed, more quality of life. Yeah, it's basically better in every other department, in my opinion. So yeah, I'm enjoying it a lot so far. Damage scaling my end game under ideal situation with the gear that I have right now for the most part. If you guys are curious, I do have a tree with clusters and without clusters. My no cluster tree is at basically 2 mil. My tree with clusters is at about 2.5 mil with a little bit of room to change. And that is running the Cold Iron Point. That's not with the endgame wand or anything like that. It's basically just assuming I have a Vuln on hit ring and assuming I have the wand. That's also not including any implicits. And it's not assuming like Fizz dot implicit on the gloves or like anything. Okay, that's without Exarch and Eater implicits whatsoever. So the build should actually be able to have very respectable DPS, especially for HCSSF. And should be able to, handily clear content. So, with all of that out of the way, I think that is where I'm going to end this build diary. The next build diary that you guys see is probably going to be for the Bone Shatter character that's coming out. He is, I don't think I'm going to transition that one into Maces. He's going to stay pure Axes. And that one is hopefully, that POB is geared a lot more for actual bossing. And it drops things like Berserk and whatnot. So there's a little bit less button bloat, which was the big annoyance I had with the previous Bone Shatter build that I was playing. So look forward to that if you're looking forward to that. If not, and you only care about this character, there will be another build diary in the next few days. So look forward to that. And as always, if you guys want to see these builds in action or talk to me about whatever, feel free to join the Discord. Links are down below. If you want to, see it live, I stream every day on Twitch. Typically, I'm always live after a YouTube video goes up. So, if there's a few days that go by without me uploading or whatever, just come by the Twitch stream if you want to say hi or whatever. Twitch.tv/physics. I'm there all the time. I literally every day since the league started, I've been streaming at least 10 hours a day. And then what else? There's Twitter down there if you guys care about that. Basically, no one follows me on Twitter. I have no Twitter followers, so I don't really use it that much. I am on Twitter a lot. I just don't tweet that much because it feels weird screaming into the void when no one's really listening. That's kind of weird to me that people do that. Anyway, I'm tangenting. Outside of that, if you guys enjoyed the video, if you guys are enjoying the content, please consider subscribing. It does support me. It lets me know that you like the content that I'm putting out. It encourages me to make more. If you like this video in particular, feel free to leave me a thumbs up and help me with the algorithm. If you didn't like it, I'm totally accepting of your down votes as well. You can give me a thumb down and tell me where you think I can improve. With all that being said, I will see you guys in the next video. Stay safe, have fun. I know 3.18 has been a little bit meh. I do have more thought videos coming on the current state of things. However, I'm doing my best to have as much fun as I can given the current situation of the game and like the no changes and all sorts of stuff like that. It puts a big damper on the type of channel and the content I like to create, but overall I'm doing everything I can to make things interesting. And that's the end. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye everybody.